Chanukah, I'd like to talk today about not something that we do, but something we don't do. And that is, we do not say Al Hanisim in Al HaMichya. So if you eat a piece of cake or you eat some grapes and you have to say what's called Bracha Achat Me'ein Shalosh, starting with the words Al HaMichya, or Al HaEtz Val Priya Eitz, or after you drink wine, Al HaGefen Val Priya Gefen, and that particular bracha, we mention Shabbos, we mention Yontiv, we even mention Rosh Chodesh, but we do not mention Al Hanisim. So the Rambam says, with regard to Al Hanisim in general, B'Chanukah u'Bepurim, Mosif be'emtza brachat haaretz Al Hanisim. In benching, in the middle of the second blessing, you say Al Hanisim. This is echoed by the Shulchan Aruch. Kol Shmanat Yemei Chanukah Omer Al Hanisim beBirkat HaMazon. All the 8 days of Chanukah, you say Al Hanisim in benching. But the Rambam says in a different place that in Bracha Achat Mi'ein Shalosh, what we call colloquially Al HaMichya, B'Shabbatot v'Yamim Tovim, Omer bebracha zo b'chlala mi'ein kedushat hayom kederech shemaskir b'birkat hamazon. Just like in benching, you mention Shabbos and Yontiv and Rosh Chodesh, so too in Al HaMichya, you mention it in an abbreviated way. And indeed, the Maharami Rutenberg in his responsum says, Ula'askir me'ein ha'me'orah b'Chanukah u'Bepurim lo tzarich. There's no reason to mention Chanukah and Purim in your Al HaMichya. And the Levush, much later, Rav Mordechai Yafeh says that on every Shabbos you have to say, before the words, Ki ata tov u'mitiv lakol, you mention, U'retzevach leitzenu b'yom HaShabbat hazeh. On Yontiv, in that same place, you say, V'samchenu b'yom tov hazeh. In Rosh Chodesh, you say, V'zochreinu b'yom Rosh Chodesh hazeh. But, U'v'Chanukah u'Bepurim, in Maskirin b'Bein HaMe'orah. So my question is, why? Why is it that we don't mention of Chanukah in the Al HaMichya? So there's 3 answers to this question that I found. Answer number 1 is from the Maharam himself. He says that regarding Al HaMichya, we have a technical problem. There is no place that mentions Thanksgiving. In the benching, you say, no delecha, we thank you. So there you can say, we also thank you for Chanukah. But in the Al HaMichya, there is no hoda'ah. There is no place that you have the thank you, that you can plunge in to thank you for the miracle of Chanukah. In his words, Kevan deleka hoda'ah bebracha deme'en gimel ein maskir. Well, the Eliyahu Rabbah, Rabbi Eliyahu Wolf, his years 1660 to 1712, he quotes the Levush that says that we don't say Thanksgiving in Al HaMichya, and the final words, V'nodelecha, is only there for a technical detail, and that is because we need it for the final bracha. We need the last sentence to correspond to final bracha. But it's really not a passage dedicated to Thanksgiving, and therefore there's no place to put it. In a word, there's no place to put it in because we don't thank God in Al HaMichya. The second answer is the Lechem Chamudot. The Lechem Chamudot, better known as the Tosfos Yontiv, comes along and says that Chanukah u'Purim she'einam ela takanat nevi'im v'chachamim leit l'nameimar she'yitzrichu lahaskir kivan shelo pirshu ken beYerushalmi behedya. Our rabbis were the one that got Chanukah and Purim. It could be a takana, enactment of the prophets, and since they didn't enact to say it, because it's not written in the Yerushalmi, we don't say it. In a word, you only say in Al HaMichya biblical holidays, Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, and Yontiv, not rabbinic holidays, not even holidays that were enacted by the prophets. But Rav Soloveitchik came along and gave a third answer, which I believe is very fundamental to what Al Hanisim is all about. Rav Soloveitchik quoted the halacha that you say Ya'aleh v'Yavo right before the end of benching, or right before the end of the bracha called HaMachazir Shechinato L'Tzion, the bracha that starts with the words Ritzei. But if you forgot it, you can add it in right there, if you remember, right before Modim. Comes along Rav Soloveitchik and says, that's not the case with regard to Al Hanisim. In Al Hanisim, you say it in Modim, and if you forgot, you can plunge it in as a separate entity after you say Atov Shimcha U'Lechana El Lehodot. And therefore, said Rav Soloveitchik, that Al Hanisim is different than Mi'ein HaMe'orah. Me'ena Ma'ora being it Ritzei or Ya'aleh V'yavo is separate from the bracha. We just say it as part of the bracha, but it's separate. Point positive. If you forgot to say it there, you can add it in right after the bracha. So if you forgot to say Ya'aleh V'yavo, say on Chol HaMoed, and you say Amachazir Shechinato L'Tzion, before you say Modim, you can add it in because it's separate from the bracha, just happens to be in there. But Al HaNisim is not. Al HaNisim is part of the bracha of Chanukah. Therefore, the proper way to say it is with the Vav, Ve'al HaNisim. We thank you for so many things and for the Nisim. Al HaNisim is part of the bracha because all we're doing is saying, God, thank you. And we're also going to thank you specifically for this. So it's like not saying just thank you, it's thank you very much. And because it's part of the bracha, in Al HaMichya, we have our ironclad rule. We have to make all the brachos that we say in benching abbreviated. So we already abbreviated the bracha of Thanksgiving within Al HaMichya. You don't have to abbreviate it and make it longer. You have to say a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And he brings a proof to what he says. In the benching, the second bracha Nodelecha has to include, as the Gemara in Brachot of Memchet Amud Bet says, it has to include Torah. And that's not the case in Al HaMichya. We don't mention neither Torah. In Al HaMichya, we abbreviate the bracha. So in a word, Al HaNisim is part of the bracha. Ya'aleh V'yavo is a part from it. And therefore, since in Al HaMichya you have to abbreviate the entire benching, you have to abbreviate every paragraph. And Ritzei or Ya'aleh V'yavo, it's his own paragraph. Al HaNisim blends into Nodelecha, and therefore there's no reason to abbreviate it even more. From this deduces Rav Soloveitchik that Al HaNisim is different than every other edition, because Chanukah doesn't have its own sanctity. Chanukah is a regular weekday, just has special mitzvot, and therefore it doesn't have its own paragraph. If it had sanctity to it, like Shabbos, Yontiv, and Rosh Chodesh, we would have dedicated its own paragraph. All we do is make the thank you longer, and therefore, since we already abbreviated it in the Al HaMichya, there's no reason to abbreviate it even more.
You, me, know you saw the gun, now so make,